Number 1.
Groat was last seen in Montpelier, Vermont on August 21, 1993. She spent time shopping and drinking beer with her boyfriend, then he dropped her off at a park-and-ride commuter lot at 10 p.m. so she could get her pickup truck. Groat has never been heard from again, and her truck was found at the park-and-ride after her disappearance, with the keys locked inside. Her purse was in the bushes nearby. She left 6 daughters behind, 4 of them were under 18 and still lived at home. Groat's boyfriend was at one time considered the prime suspect in her disappearance. He admitted having sex with a minor relative of hers and was convicted of lewd and lascivious conduct in connection with this, but he denies any involvement in Groat's disappearance. He is no longer the focus of the investigation. Several searches for Groat's remains have been conducted over the years, but no evidence has been located. She resided in Northfield, Vermont in 1993, and some agencies state she disappeared from there. Groat was declared legally dead sometime after her disappearance and has a gravestone in a cemetery in Middletown, Connecticut, where she grew up. Her daughters describe her as a dedicated mother who worked hard to provide for her family. Foul play is suspected in her case, and she is presumed to be deceased.
Number 2.
Ali was last seen at approximately 12 a.m. on February 3, 2006 at a residence in the 200 block of Lorraine Court in Tallahassee, Florida. She has never been heard from again. There were no signs of a struggle in or around her residence, and nothing appeared to have been taken, but her bedroom light and the front door floodlight were left on. The house was locked, except for one window in the spare bedroom. Ali's vehicle was left in her driveway with her purse and work keys inside, but her house keys and car keys were missing. Ali and her husband, James Gilmore, were having marital problems at the time she went missing. He had moved out of their home and she was seeing another man. Ali wanted to try to reconcile with James, and the couple was undergoing counseling together. They had a counseling appointment together for the day after Ali's disappearance, but both of them missed it. That day, James left a message at his wife's workplace, apologizing for missing the session and saying he had overslept. James has passed a voice stress test about Ali's disappearance and has cooperated fully with investigators. Authorities believe Ali disappeared under suspicious circumstances and may have met with foul play. She was excited and happy about the upcoming birth of her baby and believed she would get back together with James, and her loved ones describe her as a responsible person who would not have left without telling anyone. Ali had had a miscarriage once before and was especially careful with her pregnancy as a result. For instance, she did not want to carry heavy items or walk upstairs. Ali is a graduate of Jupiter High School and Florida A&M University. At the time of her disappearance, she worked for the Florida Department of Health and part-time for the Publix bakery. Her case remains unsolved.
Number 3.
Alexandria was last seen in Spring, Texas on April 26, 2010. She left school that day and got off at her usual bus stop on Low Ridge Road near her home at 3 p.m. en route. She called her mother, saying she was going to walk to her workplace, the Burger Barn on Teaque Road, to pick up her paycheck. Burger Barn was only about a quarter-mile from her home, but she had never walked there before. Alexandria told her mother she didn't have her house key, but her mother stated the house was unlocked. She never arrived at the restaurant, never came home, and has never been heard from again. Alexandria's case was originally classified as a runaway, but investigators are now looking at other theories in her disappearance. She left behind many personal belongings a runaway would normally have taken, such as her makeup, purse, phone charger, clothes and money, and her cellular phone hasn't been used since she disappeared. Before she went missing, Alexandria used her phone frequently and sent thousands of text messages every month. Entries in her journal indicated she was thinking of running away, but her family stated there was no evidence that the journal writings were recent. Alexandria's parents describe her as an artistic and well-behaved teenager who played softball, sang in her school choir and was in the Girl Scouts. They stated she rarely socialized outside her home, but would bring friends over instead. Several weeks after her disappearance, homicide detectives were assigned to investigate Alexandria's disappearance. Police stated it wasn't because they necessarily thought she had been murdered, but because she had been missing for a relatively long time without leads. Her case remains unsolved.
Number 4.
Teague was sunbathing at Newburgh Beach in Henderson County, Kentucky on August 26, 1995. A witness was observing the beach area through a telescope from across the Ohio River at approximately 12:45 p.m. The witness told authorities that he saw a Caucasian man approach Teague at that time. The abductor allegedly grabbed Teague by the hair and dragged her into the woods off of Newburgh Beach at gunpoint. The abductor was approximately 6'0" and weighed 210 to 230 pounds. He had brown hair and a bushy brown beard. He was wearing jeans and did not have shirt on. He was also reported to be wearing a wig and a mosquito net at the time he abducted Teague. Authorities searched the Newburgh Beach area later in the day and discovered part of Teague's bathing suit near the alleged abduction site. Additional evidence was also located, but nothing investigators found could lead them to Teague's whereabouts. She has never been heard from again. Marvin Ray Marty Dill, a resident of Henderson County, Kentucky, was pulled over in a routine traffic stop after Teague's disappearance. He drove a red and white Ford Bronco, which was identical to a vehicle a witness reported was parked next to Teague's car on Newburgh Beach. A photograph of him is posted with this case summary. Authorities discovered a hair resembling Teague's, 2 guns, 2 knives, duct tape, rubber gloves and rope in Dill's vehicle at the time of his traffic stop. The truck had bloodstains on the inside tailgate. Dill also strongly resembled the composite sketch made of Teague's abductor. Investigators received several tips connecting Dill to Teague's case in August 1995 and arrived at his home to question him. Dill reportedly told his wife to leave their residence after becoming alerted to law enforcement's presence. He then committed suicide by shooting himself before officers could enter his home. Prosecutors compiled available evidence against Dill after his death and brought the information before a grand jury. His was called as a witness during the grand jury phase, but she invoked her Fifth Amendment rights and refused to answer any questions about Teague's abduction. Another possible suspect in Teague's case is Christopher J. Below, a native of Henderson, Kentucky. A photograph of him is posted with this case summary. He pleaded guilty to attempted involuntary manslaughter in connection with the 1991 death of Catherine Fetzer and is serving a prison sentence of 11 to 18 years for the crime. Fetzer's body has never been found, but Below confessed to shooting her and pleaded guilty to attempted involuntary manslaughter. He is also considered a possible suspect in the disappearances of Mary Kushto, Shailene Farrell and Christina Porco. Investigators believe Below may have attacked other women who physically resembled Fetzer. Both Teague and Fetzer had long dark hair and were about 5'0" and 100 pounds. Below was known to be in the general area when Teague was abducted, but shortly after her disappearance, on the same day Dill committed suicide, he left Kentucky. Dill and Teague share some acquaintances. Although the witness to Teague's abduction consistently identified Dill and not Below as the kidnapper, authorities believe they have circumstantial evidence to tie Below to the crime. They believe he and Dill may have done it together, perhaps one grabbed Teague and the other drove the getaway car. Below has not been charged in connection with Teague's case, however, due to a lack of conclusive evidence linking him to the crime. In February 2013, Teague's mother filed a lawsuit against local, state and federal authorities in connection with her daughter's abduction, alleging malfeasance and a cover-up. Her mother claims law enforcement focused on the wrong suspect in Teague's kidnapping and failed to follow up on leads that would have led the investigation elsewhere. The litigation is pending. Teague's disappearance remains unsolved. Foul play is suspected due to the circumstances involved in her case.
Number 5.
Joanna and her 15-year-old daughter, Sharius Clark, disappeared from Baltimore, Maryland on February 4, 2017. They were last seen at separate times. Sharius was last seen between 2:30 and 3 p.m. She had been babysitting her 6 younger siblings at the family's residence in the 2800 block of Round Road in the Cherry Hill neighborhood when her mother's ex-boyfriend, Dennis Demo Queen, came to the house. He said Sharius left at this time. Her phone pinged downtown that evening, but none of her friends saw her. Joanna was last seen late that evening. She had been out on a date and called a friend to ask for a ride home, then called back to say she was taking the bus instead. She spoke to her friend as she was arriving at her house and promised to call her again later. This was at 11 p.m. Neither Joanna nor Sharius has ever been heard from again. A photo of Queen is posted with this case summary. He said he was drunk and asleep and woke up at approximately 11:15 p.m. when someone came in, but he couldn't remember who it was. When he woke up in the morning, both Joanna and Sharius were gone. Neither of them have ever been heard from again. Queen made no attempt to report them missing and never asked anyone where they had gone. A family friend filed the missing persons report 3 days later after she found out Joanna had missed work on February 6 and 7 and Sharius hadn't been to school. $800 in cash, which Joanna had been saving for the rent, went missing with them. Joanna and Queen had a long, troubled relationship. He began seeing her when Sharius was a toddler and was the father of Joanna's 6 younger children, who were between the ages of 2 and 10 when their mother and sister disappeared. Joanna was a reliable worker at the Goats' candy company, but Queen was unable to hold a job for very long and was frequently unemployed. According to Joanna's loved ones, Queen had been abusing and stalking her for years. He also treated Sharius differently than the other children and had physically abused her before. Joanna repeatedly tried to leave him. She got a restraining order against him in September 2016, and it was still active in February, but Joanna had Queen back into the house to watch their children so she could go to work. Sharius deeply disliked Queen and never wanted to be in the house with him if her mother wasn't there. She had also begun spending the night in her mother's room. About a week before the women disappeared, Queen made sexual advances to Sharius and she told her mother. Joanna told him he had to leave and said she would put all his belongings out on the street by February 4. This was the day she disappeared. Both of them were active on social media, but there hasn't been any activity on their social media accounts or their cellular phones since they went missing. Joanna's loved ones stated it would be uncharacteristic of her to abandon her other children, and Sharius has no history of running away from home. Joanna's other children were placed in foster care after their mother's disappearance. They have not provided any useful information about the day she and Sharius disappeared. Queen's brother took a lie detector test in the women's cases. The result was inconclusive. Queen refused to take the test. The police have not named Queen or anyone else as a suspect or person of interest in Joanna and Sharius's disappearances and said there was little overt evidence of a crime in their cases, but they stated they thought the women had met with foul play. Their cases remain unsolved.
Number 6.
Toni left a cousin's home in Oakland, California to drive back to her family's residence in San Francisco, California on March 16, 1990. She was driving her boyfriend's Chevrolet Camaro, which she had trouble starting when she left. It kept stalling. The car apparently stalled again on the San Francisco Bay Bridge sometime during the evening. Another car collided with Toni's vehicle prior to 12 a.m. Police arrived just 6 minutes later and found that Toni was not inside the vehicle after the accident. Assuming that the impact of the collision swept her into the water below, the U.S. Coast Guard dragged the bottom of the bay. Toni was not located and neither were her clothes. No blood, hair or oil residue was found in her vehicle either. Her mother has stated that she received a phone call approximately 1 week after Toni disappeared from a young woman she believes was her daughter. The girl was crying on the line for approximately 40 seconds before the call was terminated. Authorities were unable to trace the source. The majority of officials maintain that Toni drowned the night of the car accident, but her case remains classified as that of a missing person. Some witnesses reported seeing an African-American man looking under the Camaro. Others saw the man leaving the scene. No one saw Toni's body going over the bridge railing. Her bracelet, which she never removed, was found on the passenger side floorboard along with her car keys. The man who ran into Toni's car was tried for vehicular manslaughter but acquitted for lack of evidence proving Toni was in fact dead. Some reports may state that Toni resided in San Bruno, California. She was a high school senior in 1990. She enjoyed swimming and dancing and ran on her school track team. Her case remains unsolved and is classified as a possible non-family abduction.
Number 7.
Sharpless was last seen in Gladwine, Pennsylvania at 4:45 a.m. on August 23, 2009. She left her home in West Brandywine Township, Pennsylvania to go out with a friend, Crystal Johns, that night. They originally went to the Ice nightclub, then to a house party in the 1300 block of Bauburn Drive. At 3 a.m., Sharpless sent a text message to her 12-year-old daughter. She later caused a disturbance at the party when she got angry with another guest and poured a bottle of champagne on the floor. She and Johns were asked to leave. Both women had been drinking alcohol that evening, something Sharpless was not supposed to do because of the medication she was taking, and Sharpless had reportedly been awake for approximately 36 hours. She was angry and crying when she left the party with Johns. They had only driven a few blocks when they got into an argument because Johns didn't believe Sharpless was sober enough to drive. Sharpless has a 2008 conviction for driving under the influence. Sharpless stopped the car and demanded her friend get out, so Johns exited the vehicle and then Sharpless drove away. Johns initially assumed she would return. When she didn't come back, Johns had a relative come and pick her up instead. Sharpless has never been heard from again. Sharpless was driving her black four-door 2002 Pontiac Grand Prix GT with tinted windows and the Pennsylvania license plate number DND 7772 at the time of her disappearance. It has never been located. A photo of a similar vehicle is posted with this case summary. Someone ran the license plate number in Camden, New Jersey on September 8, 2 weeks after Sharpless disappeared. By the time Pennsylvania police were notified of this, several days had passed and they were unable to locate the car. Sharpless's cellular phone also remains missing and has been turned off since approximately 4 a.m. the day she disappeared. According to Johns, Sharpless was low on gas and it's possible she ran out of gas or turned in another direction to go get some. There were clusters of sightings of her reported in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Camden, New Jersey after her disappearance. All of them took place in areas known for their prostitution and drug activity. None of the sightings have been confirmed. A private detective hired by Sharpless's family believes she may be alive and may have gotten involved with drugs in the sex trade. She had a drug problem in the past. Johns isn't considered a suspect in her disappearance, and neither is anyone else at the party Sharpless attended that night. Since Sharpless's disappearance, there has been no activity on her bank accounts or credit cards. She is a single mother and lived with her mother and stepfather at the time of her disappearance and worked as an infectious disease nurse at Lancaster General Hospital. She graduated from the nursing program at Immaculata University in 2007. It's uncharacteristic of Sharpless to leave without warning, and she is described as a devoted parent who wouldn't have abandoned her child. Her case remains unsolved.